to a victory celebration at the Shoe episode of the Buckeye Fever podcast. My name is Dave Holmes. I am your host as always. This week we have a lot of things to talk about. Later in the show, I kept the receipts. We are going to read some comments from fans after the Michigan game and even after the Tennessee game. And it's funny to watch the fans slowly start to believe in this Buckeye team again. So we're going to have fun. We're going to eat some humble pie and especially some crow coming up later on the show. But let's start with the big news of the day, and that is Jim Knowles, defensive coordinator, going to Penn State, a new 3-year contract worth $9.3 million. That's $3.1 million a season to be a coordinator. This is off the rails. I mean, if you would have told head coaches, like I've talked to John Cooper about his salary in the 90s off camera. I mean, Coop would have loved to make coordinator money. And I understand inflation's a thing, but my goodness, 3.1 for a coordinator, the first $3 million man in the world of coordinators in college football. So I will not get reckless here and speculate because I know there's so much rumor and innuendo behind the scenes of what happened here. What didn't happen. Is this strictly a money play? Was his agent working Ohio State? Some people like to talk about friction behind the scenes. These are all things that get talked about when someone leaves. I mean, if Jim Knowles resigns and he's a national champion, no one talks about any of these rumors. So I'm not going to get into that too much. I will say this. It's not good to lose Jim Knowles. So I'm not going to act like this was a good thing for the Buckeyes. It is not, right? It's never good to lose the continuity of a multi-year coordinator with the number one defense who just won it all. There's no good way to spin that. I will say this for the Buckeye fans panicking. Jim Knowles was much, much better with arguably the most experienced defense in Ohio State history, loaded with NFL talent. So, yes, Jim Knowles had a lot to do with this. No doubt. Let's give him his flowers. He led a championship defense. Ryan Day at the podium at Ohio Stadium during the celebration said he's the best defensive coordinator in the country. But I do want to say we also need to give the players some credit here. He had a really good group of veteran guys who knew his system. So it's a two-way street here. It's both Jim Knowles and the players. I don't think Jim Knowles leaving suddenly means the Silver Bullets are going to go straight into the ground and nosedive next season. I'll be curious to see if they discuss internal promotions or if they go outside. More on that here in the next couple weeks because this is the number one priority now on Ryan Day's off-season to-do list. On Sunday, fun day at the Shoe. I got to be there for the celebration. Tens of thousands of fans were there. And Jim Knowles was not, by the way. And I asked Ross Bjork, the athletic director, before the event started about the Jim Knowles rumors. I think he was probably a little annoyed at the question. It's one of those things where I have to ask the question, and he has every right to be annoyed at the question. And he said, you know, Dave, these things work themselves out. This is Ohio State. Basically said, we'll be okay, no matter what happens. But Jim Knowles was not there. Ryan Day shouted him out at the microphone. I would have loved if Ryan got up there and said, I'd like to see where Jim Knowles is right now. Like go Lou Holtz. Because seriously, where was Jim Knowles? He wasn't there at the celebration. But Ryan was classy in giving Jim Knowles a shout out. It was fun to watch Ryan Day actually enjoy himself. I think that was the first time I saw, after the championship you win, you're exhausted, you're clearly happy. But Ryan was really having fun. He was roasting some players. He was enjoying himself. Will Howard, they had fun at his expense for, tripping on himself on what should have been a touchdown run. And it was just a fun day at the Shoe, a day that seemed inconceivable just 2 months ago. And to see everyone rally together around that team was a really, really, really fun day. Then Ryan Day on Monday night does the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. Think about if I would have told you at the end of November, Ryan Day is going to do the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. It was awesome. I'm like, this is the head football coach at Ohio State. He's on the Tonight Show. Now, kids, the Tonight Show is a program that we used to watch growing up with Johnny Carson and Jay Leno. It was a huge deal back in the day. Still is if you're like me and you're 40 plus, it still is a huge deal. So that was pretty cool. I thought Ryan did great. Fallon asked him, some typical late night jokey stuff about, LeBron James. Does he have eligibility to play? And Ryan made a funny quip saying, hey, LeBron's got to go to the back of the line and earn his roster spot like everyone else. But pretty cool to see Ryan Day celebrating on Sunday, Tonight Show on Monday. But Ryan, now it's time to stop having fun for at least a few days. Let's get us a D coordinator and start looking ahead to next season. Coming up next on the Buckeye Fever podcast, we are looking backwards, though. We are going to read some comments that were left about this podcast when the Buckeyes were at their lowest. We kept the receipts. Coming up next on the Buckeye Fever podcast. Welcome back to the Buckeye Fever podcast, one of the greatest turnarounds in college football history. These Buckeyes going from that loss to Michigan to winning the most difficult college football playoff field in the history of the sport. Now, I never read comments online. I try to avoid them. It's a mental health thing. People online tend to be miserable. People rarely leave you a comment and say, hey, Dave, keep up the good work. It's normally like, hey, you ugly freak, quit spouting off your trash opinion. So I thought, I wonder what the comments were actually like. So I went back last week and I looked and printed some out if you're watching on YouTube. Let's go through some comments, and let's start with right after the Michigan game. My man at Westman Can, he wrote the Magna Carta on our YouTube page. It was like 37 straight comments blasting me, Ohio State. And if you remember after the Michigan game, I came on this show and I said, if you want to fire Ryan Day, I understand your sentiment. I'm not ready to, and here's why. And I gave my reasons why I would still give Ryan Day a chance to fix this. I think in hindsight, my take ended up being pretty good. Westman Can didn't think so. Quote, I don't take advice from a fence jumper like you. He stinks. He's a QB coach, nothing more. He's a choke monster. All right, Westman Can. Talked about this last week, this idea of riding the fence and how I believe that people who ride the fence are actually logical, rational people because they can see two sides of an argument. And I could see the side of the argument that said, no Ohio State coach should lose 4 in a row to Michigan. I could also see the side of the fence that said Ryan Day has a historically good winning percentage, has won plenty of big games, and was 1 or 2 plays away from winning national championships in the past. I chose the side of logic, ration, and patience. Westman Can says he's not going to take advice from a fence jumper like me. Maybe you should, Wes. Life is actually pretty nice here on the fence sometimes when you just give people a little bit of time to work things out. This was going into the Tennessee game. At BrewLife HVAC 865. BrewLife HVAC 865. Tennessee is about to smack OSU. I'll be watching live at 4 a.m. on the other side of the world. Well, BrewLife HVAC 865. It's a good thing HVAC is in your name because that take absolutely sucked. That take HVAC'd. Tennessee did not smack OSU. My only hope for you, my good friend BrewLife, is that you were not actually setting your alarm at 3:45 to wake up and watch that beat down at the shoe when the Buckeyes ended that game in the first quarter against Tennessee. All right, after the show, I talked about why Alabama should not make it in the field. I went at their schedule and talked about Mercer and the loss to Vanderbilt and the bad loss to Oklahoma. This came from Otis John Jr., 3023, 3023. Just another sorry Buckeye, referring to me. Imagine a Buckeye yakking about another team's schedule. Well, Otis John Jr., 3023. Ryan Day beat the number 2, 3, 4, and 5 team in the final poll. He literally won a World Cup group stage round robin with the top 5 teams. They became the first team in NCAA history to win 5 games against top 5 opponents. They won 6 games against top 10 teams. You can make a solid case that this Ohio State team played the hardest schedule in the history of college football, and they were the ones holding the trophy. So this sorry Buckeye is going to yak about other team schedules because the Buckeyes earned it. At Herbie Mac 100. I know you're smart enough to know your coaches are just stupid. All right, first off, everyone acts like I play for Ohio State because I live in Columbus. I do want to be clear. This whole idea, your coaches, your team. I'm Dave Holmes. I went to Kent State. I grew up in Northeast Ohio. I lived here 41 of my 42 years. I now work in Columbus. I have since 2015. I cover the Buckeyes. I come out here and try to give it to you straight. When the Buckeyes are bad, I call it bad. When they're good, I call it good. I do ride the fence a lot of times because I try to be calm and rational and really analyze situations. So first off, your coaches, they're not my coaches, all right? I don't write the check for any of these guys, but I know you're smart enough to know your coaches are just stupid. Now, I pulled this quote out of a much longer paragraph from Herbie Mack. I'm not going to go to the low-hanging fruit here, Herbs. I could go there were so many grammar, spelling errors. You got to button up the grammar if we're going to play this sort of card. But I think the coaches, Ryan and Chip and Jim, proved that they were smart enough to win a national title. All right, I'll do one more. Brian Woods, 9266. First off, a lot of numbers in these names. Red flag, right? Red flag emoji. Normally, I don't respond to people who have more than 3 numbers in your name. I allow 3 numbers because I assume 3 numbers is a birth date. I assume name, 3 numbers, and those 3 numbers are your birthday. That's what I assume. If that's true, a lot of you were born on April 20th. See, a lot of 420s in your names. A lot of April 20th birthdays. A lot of you. A lot of June 9ths as well, if I'm being serious. But, okay, so Brian Woods, 9266. Ryan Day cannot handle the big games or the big stage. Oh, yes, this was after the Tennessee game. Ryan Day cannot handle the big games or the big stage, and he will prove it again in the Rose Bowl. The Buckeyes need a new coach. He cannot handle the big games or the big stage. He will prove it again in the Rose Bowl. The Buckeyes need a new coach. Okay. Ryan did just fine in the Rose Bowl when he laid a biblical beatdown of the number 1 only undefeated team in the country. But it was kind of funny to watch these comments. And it was like, if you were anti-Ryan Day, anti-Ohio State, you just kept waiting for your chance to gloat. And it never happened. You had that window after Michigan. A lot of people talked. And to be clear, I'm having fun at people's expense here. I understand the post-Michigan rage. I think it went too far in the severity of it. But I do understand the post-Michigan emotion. You wanted to be mad. Terrible loss. Still no excuse, even now as a national champion. Shouldn't have happened. I think it went too far. I think it got egregiously aggressive from a lot of people. But I understand the hate. But it was funny to watch how people they're never going to beat Tennessee. You can't beat the SEC. Like, ding, 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 ding. You're never going to beat that number 1 team in the Rose Bowl. Ding, 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 ding. Texas and the SEC in their home stadium is going to show you ding, 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 ding. And it was just like every single time the Buckeyes answered the call. And then by the time Notre Dame got here, I found online, it was almost like acceptance. The people had accepted that this Ohio State team really was the best in the country. What we thought back in August became true again in January. Maybe this is a lesson, though, for all of us, that we just need to pump the brakes sometimes and practice a little bit of patience. It's just so easy to give up on people. And, a lot of us ate pumpkin pie over the holidays. A lot of us ate pecan pie over the holidays. But even more people ate humble pie, it looks like, in the month of December and January. That'll do it for us on this week's episode of the Buckeye Fever podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Leave us a 5-star, tell your friends all about us, and we'll see you back here next time.